My name is Steve Kovic, and my subject today is how to handle a disagreement with your spouse like a master rather than a disaster. In this video, I'm going to show you how to manage a discussion about a difficult financial situation in marriage. We're going to look at two scenarios. In the first one, we're going to see how not to handle a discussion, and the second one, we're going to see how it's done by the masters. This video is based on the research of Dr. John Gottman, world-famous psychologist who studied 3,000 couples over a period of 30 years and compiled his research in a New York Times best-selling book, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. But before we go any further, I'd like to define Dr. Gottman's terms, disasters and masters in marriage. The masters tend to be positive and gentle, affectionate and humorous. They take responsibility for their actions or the words that they use, rather than making up excuses. They're excited and they genuinely enjoy interacting with one another. On the other hand, the disasters tend to be defensive and critical. They spend time diagnosing the defaults of one another, the defects of one another. There's a lot of tension and anxiety in the air, and they're easily angered and hostile in their interaction with one another. Let's consider the following scenario. Money is tight, and a tuition payment is coming up for a couple for their son, John. They've agreed to cut back on their spending and tighten their belts so that they wouldn't have to go in debt when the tuition payment comes due. Unfortunately, one of the spouses has been spending $300 a month on unplanned meals at work, while the other spouse is taking peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to work in order to avoid going into debt for the tuition payment. As you can imagine, there's a lot of tension in the air. You can cut it with a knife. So here's how the disasters approach the disagreement. I can't believe that you're spending $300 a month on lunches when we agreed to cut back so we wouldn't have to go into debt for John's tuition payment. What in the world are you thinking? You're spending like there's no tomorrow. The response of the spouse is, get over it. I'm going to do whatever it takes to further my career. You know, I'm new at this job. I need to find out as much as I can, and that's why I'm taking lunch with my colleagues. Don't tell me how to spend my money. We'll figure out a way, even if it means going into debt. What did you notice about this dialogue? Well, the first spouse is critical and judgmental of spending $300 a month on lunches without seeking to discover why their spouse is doing that. The second spouse is defensive and not taking responsibility for their actions in light of their agreement. The first spouse is diagnosing the defects of the spender, and there's great tension in the air. Dr. Gottman observed that disasters of marriage were more than 1.25 times negative than positive in discussing an area of disagreement. I don't know about you, but I don't like being around negative people, and we all know that negativity can take a tremendous toll on any marriage. Now let's take a look at how masters handle the same disagreement. The first spouse says, I'm concerned that you've been spending about $300 a month on lunches. Help me understand what you're thinking. I thought we agreed we were going to cut back so we could make that tuition payment without going into debt. Well, the response of the second spouse goes something like this. I'm sorry, honey. I want to be more effective at work. You know it's a new job, and I'm spending that money so that I can be successful in the long run. I figure somehow we'll figure out how to make the tuition payment. But you're right. We agreed to tighten our belts, and I haven't been doing it. So I'm going to find other ways that I can get the information I need in order to be successful. What did you notice about this dialogue? Well, both spouses are concerned, but they're not attacking one another. There's an attempt to seek to understand one another, and they're focusing on solutions, not problems. They're taking responsibility for their actions. And what you don't see in this case is defensiveness, anxiety, or tension. Dr. Gottman observed that masters of marriage are 5 times more positive in discussing an area of disagreement than they were negative. I don't know about you, but as I said before, I don't like being around negative people, but positive, solution-oriented people are really great in my book. I can't conclude without making a few final observations from Dr. Gottman's research. He discovered that masters of marriage are 20 times more positive when they're not discussing an area of disagreement with their spouse than they are negative. And Disasters of marriage tend to be 1.25 times more negative than positive in discussing an area of disagreement. In other words, regardless of what they're doing, the disasters of marriage tend to be negative, whereas the masters are positive. So what can we learn to help us become masters of marriage? The next time you have a disagreement with your spouse, I recommend that you seek to understand their point of view. Stay positive instead of critical and negative. Take responsibility for your actions or your words if you said or done something inappropriate. Express your feelings in a kind and gentle way and stay solution focused. If you do this, you will become a master of marriage. For more information on how to have a happy marriage, go to my website, www.stevekovic.com.